So before I start this rather spooky video, I want to ask a question, and I want you to ponder this while you are listening to the video. In your opinion, are ghost trains real? Of course, nowadays we associate the ghost train to be fairground rides, sitting in that little car with streamers and fake animatronics coming out to grab you. But there has also been many stories on the tracks themselves. Spooky whistles, screaming engines charging through stations, only for the terrified staff to find nothing on the tracks other than their own cold sweats and hearing nothing but their own racing heartbeats. While others have sworn they've seen the ancient locomotives that were previously destroyed in accidents, crossing bridges and going through tunnels in a desperate attempt to get to its final destination. I have scoured the internet to find some of the most perilous ghost stories, and also done a little research to find some real-life ghost engines that you can still ride today. So if your stomach can handle it, grab those blankets and candy and settle in for some spooky tales. Through the mist and the darkness, we first take you on our first story, to a railway near Powys. It's a cold winter's night, a small station called Talabont on the Talalyn Railway. This historic narrow gauge railway is very popular during the day. During the night, locals have sworn hearing whistles and seeing lights as though a locomotive was speeding down the tracks, hours after the railway had closed. More chilling is that people have claimed to hear screams of terror with the engine's cries and wishes of steam. In the station hall, even today, there is a newspaper clipping that's showing a terrible accident near the viaduct. Could the sounds be coincidence, or could this be the engine desperately trying to get its passengers home? The New Tay Bridge in Scotland is also rumoured to have its own apparitions following a tragic accident. In 1873, the Tay Bridge collapsed just as a passenger train was crossing it. There was no survivors as the engine plunged into the icy depth below. While most of the wreckage was unsalvageable and some of the bodies never recovered, the engine was put back on the rails once again, and some of the girders was used to make the replacement bridge. Even today, if you cross the Tay Bridge, you can still see the structural supports of the collapsed one. Every year, on the 28th of December, locals have sworn that they could see the ghostly figure of a train speeding along the bridge, only for it to disappear once it reaches the centre, as if the waters have reclaimed it once again. And it isn't just on the line that you'll find ghost locomotives. Woodchester Mansion in Gloucestershire has had a rather unusual encounter. The house sits on an abandoned and long-forgotten railway line. In 2001, the owners woke to a terrifying sight of an old steam train thundering through their house. The ghostly sighting was investigated, and while no train was ever seen, banging sounds were heard throughout the house, which accumulated into the sound of puffing and steam pistons. It's not just your rural areas that's had its share of ghost trains. The London Underground is infamous for its usual apparitions, and there is rumoured to be a steam train on the Northern Line that runs between East Finchley and Wellington, with many people reporting to hear steam nearby. And it's not just the old steam that people tend to see. In fact, there is a ghost diesel. This engine was called Nimbus, and it was spotted several times running along the tracks at the South End Tunnel of Hadleywood Station, despite it being broken up for scrap in 1980. From spooky tunnels to people insisting that they've heard the whistles of an engine, and there's been no track in sight, and two people witnessing even in the aftermath of an accident with semi-transparent people receiving aid, only for the whole scene to suddenly disappear when the living witnesses went to help. There always be spookiness on the tracks. But as I mentioned before, do ghost trains really exist? In fact, yes they do, and you can ride one today. In railway enthusiast terms, a ghost train is usually a service or a train that is run even once a day, once a week, or sometimes even once a month. These trains were created following a parliamentary ruling in 1844 that required all railway companies to offer affordable transport with the Act, insisting that each service be run at least once a day. This is now no longer legally binding, but to prevent the railway's closure and the cut-off of several people that still use the line, some services only run once or maybe even twice a week. The term ghost train can also be used to describe a train running normally but with no passengers. In this pandemic, this has become more common because of the lockdowns. Snaith Railway, just outside of Leeds, is a perfect example of a ghost station on a ghost line. There is no ticket booth, no taxi rank, and the carriages usually run empty. The service runs about 6 trains a day. That may sound a lot, but when you consider Leeds Station runs about 2,500 services a day in comparison, it's very clearly a tiny amount. So would you be willing to ride a ghost train down a long track on a forgotten station? Or would you be willing to spend a night at Woodchester Mansion in the hopes of hearing the engine once again? Let me know in the comments. And if you do find yourself walking on an old embankment on a disused railway in the middle of the night, just be aware what's around you, because you never know what's going to come down the track.